Hey, Armand here with a quick look, a relatively quick look at Jupiter in Pisces in 2021 and beyond. This is kind of an interesting movement for Jupiter. We're going to get through some basic stuff at the front end of the video, and then I'll do a little talk about each sign and how it's likely to get a little bit of the Jupiter energy, the Jupiterian, or I think more properly, jovial energy into their lives. So watch the beginning part. We should really watch the whole thing through because, you do your sun sign, you do your ascendant sign, you can do your moon sign, you can do somebody else's sign. By the time you get done with it, you're probably happy to hear what they all have to say. Or not, I don't know. So I'm sure somebody will be nice to put a timestamp on the bottom and tell you where you can go watch your particular sign. Okay, so Jupiter in Pisces. Jupiter is coming back to his home sign of Pisces, as he does for about 1 out of every 12 years. And this is a pretty special occurrence because Jupiter, during his stay in Pisces, is going to meet Neptune. Now, Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, the new ruler of Pisces, and Jupiter is the old ruler of Pisces. And this is the first time that they are meeting in Pisces since the discovery of Neptune. I think that that's true. No, it probably happened about 168 years ago, but that doesn't happen very often. And so we get a big influx of Neptunian Piscean energy when these two planets meet. And if you think about the 19th century and the spiritualist movement, and also as well, there are a lot of stuff was happening at that time that was about dissolving boundaries and opening things up. It was the era of Lincoln, and it was the era of Darwin. And just generally speaking, those Piscean extremes. And that is always a theme for Pisces. People think Pisces is so spiritual. It can be, but it's extremes. It's extremes. And in the 19th century, there was the spiritualist movement, but it was a very materialist time. It was the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels, right? That was dialectical materialism, right? So you got both sides of the story. A little Uranus in there giving you both sides of the story. A little bit of Neptune just kind of amplifying it. You get the idea. So the thing is, with Jupiter coming into Pisces, and Neptune has already been here for a decade, right? So not all of them, but most of the themes that we're going to be dealing with over the course of the next couple of years are themes that we already have on the table. Jupiter is just going to make it more so, right? So we're going to, Neptune works kind of slowly, subtly, Jupiter a little bit faster. So we'll see things accelerating a bit. We'll see that on the social, political angle, although, boy, I don't know about if we're going to I don't know what acceleration of polarization would mean in that camp, but we will see that kind of movement accelerated. So the things that have already been on the table that are Neptunian. Now, here's an interesting thing. Jupiter, for a lot of years, had the same pattern. He would get into a sign, he would race up to 20 degrees of the sign, he would back up to about 10 degrees of the sign, and then he would go forward and leave the sign. Did this in about a year. Jupiter spends about a year in each sign. And that pattern is now broken. So what happened is Jupiter on May 13th of 2021 is going into Pisces, but he's only going to get to 2 degrees of Pisces, and he's going to stop and he's going to retrograde back into Aquarius on July 28th. So it's a very short stay initially. And then he goes back, stops in Aquarius, and he comes forward again, gets into Pisces in late December of 2021. And then he shoots through the entire sign of Pisces and gets into Aries. And I don't mind saying that I'm going to, this is complicated enough. I'm not trying to say that I memorize it all. He gets into Aries on May 10th of 2022. He goes a little ways in Aries. He gets to about 8 degrees of Aries, and then he stops and retrogrades back into Pisces on October 28th of 2022. He stops, he moves direct, and then he winds up leaving the sign for good and going onwards on December 20th, 2022. That's a lot. That's a lot. He meets with Neptune during the second stay. That happens right around April 12th of 2022, right? Just as Neptune will be pretty far along in Pisces at that time. And that's likely to be the biggest moment of Jupiter in Pisces. That's the biggest moment when he meets with Neptune. That is setting the tone for the Piscean issues going forward. So the first little stay when he's in 2021, early in the year, we'll get a taste of it. We'll get a sense of what's going on. And then at the end of the year, he comes back in, and there's that chunk in the winter of 2021 to the spring of 2022. Very, very northern hemisphere centric. I know if you're watching below the equator, it's all reversed. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Most of us live up here. What are you going to do? So that's really the big chunk of Jupiter in Pisces. And then the last little bit of it is going to be sort of the finishing up aspect. But it's 3 different trips into Pisces, his old home sign, where he's very happy, right? And I think Jupiter will bring some optimism and positive energy to the issues, although the planets the planets are not really playing sides with things. You have to recognize that the planets are not really looking at things the way that we look at them or anything like that. They're setting the table. We sort of have to deal with what happens. So we have these 3 moments of Jupiter in Pisces, and the largest one is from the winter of 2021 until about May of 2022. That's the big chunk. All right, what are these Piscean themes that are going to be so prominent? Well, on a very basic, maybe too abstract level, there's the themes of saviors and victims. Who is the person that is going to save us? Now, it's unlikely to really catch on with a lot of people, mind you, because of the nature of where we are now in society, but there is a little bit of that kind of energy. The other thing is with Jupiter jumping back and forth between Pisces and Aquarius, bringing a lot of the social issues from Aquarius into Pisces and sort of to deal with them in a Piscean way. Last year, everything was about Capricorn. Everything was happening in Capricorn, the structure institution sign. And then things sort of opened out into Aquarius, a little bit more about our ideals and the big picture values. And now things are moving a little bit into the Piscean realm, which has more to do with what goes beyond our ideals, a little more spiritual as opposed to social. So we're getting a bit of a shift. And actually, Jupiter leaves Pisces for the last time, goes into Aries in 2023, 2020, you heard me before, 2022, and Saturn gets into the sign just a few months later. So there is a bit of a shift. But there's this blending of the Aquarian and the Piscean energies. Okay, the other side of Pisces, of course, is victims, right? You have with Pisces, you have victims and you have saviors. And to an extent, it will have a lot to do with empowering victims. We'll probably see a little bit more of that kind of, if you're not a victim, you have no right to speak kind of thing. It actually turns victims into the prestige position. We'll be working all of that sort of stuff out. Specific issues, refugees. Now, again, all of these issues these issues have all been around for a while, but they've been very prominent since Neptune got into Pisces back in 2011. But refugees, whether it's the southern border of the United States or whether it is Europe and the people coming from the Middle East, the theme of refugees. I would say that with Jupiter in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces and Saturn in Aquarius and Pluto still ripping up the road in Capricorn, a hardline approach will probably fail. A hardline approach to refugees will probably really backfire on anyone who takes that. These are complex issues, and we tend to think about things in very black and white terms, but a hardline approach is not going to really catch on too well, I think, with this configuration. Other things, cannabis. Well, cannabis is almost legal everywhere, and that will probably just accelerate. That'll just happen a little bit quicker. Also, the psychedelic revolution, we've had the psychedelic revolution, the psychedelic renaissance, right? The incorporation of psychedelics into therapy and the normalization of psychedelics is something that is very, very likely to accelerate very much over the course of the next couple of years. Already, Neptune in Pisces has made changes that would have been, it would be inconceivable 15, 20 years ago. I think Rick Strassman had one study approved for DMT someplace back in the early 2000s after years of trying. And now all of a sudden it's becoming something that we're more open to, which is a terrific thing. Christianity, and specifically the Catholic Church, very Piscean. And of course, talk about having had some difficult times since 2011 and beyond. You should look at the attendance for church in Ireland over the last decade is a real interesting curve to take a look at. But Pope Francis, who's very much a different kind of energy coming from the church, a lot of these types of things are going to be, again, more prominent. It's already underway. It's not a big change. It's not a big shift. It's just more of it. Anything having to do with oils and plastics, and I would say pharmaceuticals, almost, not giving out investment advice, but, Pisces rules those things. So we're likely to see quite a bit with those. That's undoubtedly part of the picture. I think also too, the whole pandemic and its responses, it's a bit of a Piscean thing in and of itself, right? Pisces has a lot to do with things that you can't see, things that are, whether they're gases or viruses and things that you can't see. So, so anything that's dealing with those is going to be prominent. No doubt, renewable energy. Again, this is all stuff that's all, we already know this. The question is it going to be more of it? And maybe we're going to get a little bit of, maybe we'll make some shifts and turn some corners as we do so. And I would look especially towards February of 22, when Jupiter will sextile Uranus. And whenever those two get together, you usually get some kind of a technological advance that happens in some way or another. Undoubtedly, electric cars, for example, or something that very much correlates with this. But then technology stuff happens. You get a big chunk of that, and it'll probably accelerate right around February of 2022. And Jupiter will then go on a couple of months later to sextile Pluto in Capricorn, and that could very much signal a kind of, I would say, it's almost like sort of a bringing to earth of some of the possibilities, some of the changes. Pluto's getting pretty late in Capricorn now. A lot of destruction. It's time to start giving some little hints about what the future is going to look like for our institutions, for our governments, for our whole, for the whole Megillah, for the whole show. What's it going to look like? And gender issues, especially transgender. Actually, anything having to, if the prefix trans applies, then it's Piscean. And so, like, let's say even like psychedelics, right, which open up to the transpersonal realm, transpersonal psychology, anything that has to do with transportation to an extent is of Piscean nature. So these are the themes that are already there. So it's not exciting to listen to talk about them. To say, well, there's going to be more. That's what you get, though. Let's look at what happens to each sign, or what the potential is for each sign. Now, this is kind of, as one person wrote after I did this for Jupiter and something, they said, you could get this in any astrology book. Yeah, which you'd have to pay for instead of watching it on YouTube, right? It is basic Jupiter and Pisces and what it means for each sign, but we also have to take into account things like the fact that Pluto is still in Capricorn, the fact that Saturn is in Aquarius, and the fact that Uranus is out there in Taurus. And so it's a little bit different than it might otherwise be for the different signs. So let's start with Pisces. If you're a Pisces sun, if you're a Pisces ascendant, if you're, that's Pisces. So whatever you want, that's Piscean in your chart. The themes for Pisces are going to be, it's really just a general influx of energy that you can pretty much direct however you like. Although, of course, it's Pisces, so there's a sort of sense of serendipity that goes with Jupiter and Neptune both being in the sign. It's like you could kind of direct the energy. Maybe when Saturn gets into the sign, you direct it, but it's almost a sense like you're sort of being taken along by the energy. Now, let's move forward to Aries. Aries is really in the midst of serendipity because you've got Neptune and Jupiter now in your 12th house. Now, the 12th house is the stuff that's like sort of behind you where you can't see it. And let's say it's like the little demons or, daemons, the daemon and the demon on the shoulders there. Neptune in Pisces may be, it's slower moving, but it may be a little bit more problematic for Aries, very directed energy. Jupiter, it's the good daemon. It is the guardian angel, if you want to use that kind of frame of reference. It's like a guardian angel kind of energy for you. So it's helpful, and you don't really know why. For Taurus, you're being shaken by having Uranus in your sign, and the Taurian stability. Where are the chips ahoy? So somebody move the chips ahoy. That's Uranus in Taurus. Jupiter is going to ease that out a little bit. So the times when Jupiter is in your sign, it'll kind of work for you nicely because it will provide a bit of an out, a bit of an escape. It's it's good for things like networking and friendship and other 11th house kinds of things. It's good for helping you with your long-term, long-range, either way, or long-range goals. That's positive for Taurus too. But I feel that it's really just sort of the introduction of a little bit of an escape hatch that you're really going to appreciate mostly. So if Taurus, you've been getting a little shaken up, you've got a little bit of an escape hatch with Jupiter. You got to be everybody, see, this is why you have to watch the whole thing. Everybody's got to be a little bit careful about having Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces and, hitting the bottle and, what with cannabis being legal and having the psychedelic renaissance and so on. You got to be a little careful about not escaping too much. Little escape is good. Just titrate it and make it reasonable. Gemini, it's a career energy for you. And if you're a Gemini, you might have really been struggling with career stuff lately, a little bit of lack of direction or lack of traction. Oh, what with the pandemic, but Jupiter should help that quite a bit. It won't necessarily give you direction, but it will probably help to get you to gain some traction. Moving out to the sign of Cancer, this is now in your 9th house. It might be good for travel. Wouldn't it be nice if there was travel as a possibility? It's good for education. It is good, higher education, going back to school, picking up on something. It would help that kind of thing. It's a very nice energy though. That's what you're really getting there. It's great for learning astrology or, taking a course in yoga or something along those lines as well for Cancer. Leo, it's a very oblique energy for Leo. It's probably good for things like, getting a mortgage or dealing with insurance companies and junk like that. You might get a nice tax refund or something along those lines because this is an 8th house kind of situation for Leo. Could be good for sex, although I think that's really more of a 5th house thing in the enjoyable as opposed to the biological sense. But it kind of, something's got to be better than insurance, right? Virgo, it is a partnership aspect. Now, Virgo, again, you've been dealing with this Neptunian energy when it comes to partners and also opponents, right? It's the opposite sign is also open enemies. Having Neptune there, there's a sense of vagueness. Maybe things aren't so open. Or, with partners, maybe things have been a little bit nebulous, a little uncertain. Jupiter should probably help that a little bit. You get a little bit more of a sense of knowing what's up, at least, having a little bit better direction and probably more opportunities as well. If you're a Libra rising, this is again a very oblique energy. It's a sixth house energy. Well, it's a good time to while everybody else is out boozing and stuff, this is a very good time to take care of your overall health, well-being. That's very sixth house stuff, I don't think Jupiter in a sign ever really indicates a diet plan, but, it would be, again, very good for, yoga, exercise and things like that. And, and perhaps to deal with, your diet and food and stuff like that, perhaps. It could also indicate a lot of work. You might actually have a lot of work to do, not necessarily career energy, just work, just stuff to do. It could be a nice coworker. That would be a good thing, but it could just mean that you have more work to do. There's just more stuff for you to take care of. Not ideal, I suppose, but it's not terrible. For Scorpio, again, you've been dealing with the Neptunian energy, and now here comes Jupiter, and you're getting this big blast of Piscean energy coming from the fifth house. Creativity, romance and the fun side of sex. You'll get good opportunities for moving things forward with the stuff that you love. The stuff that really, it's your thing. If it's like going skiing, or if it's painting, or if it's, whatever that thing is, this is a great opportunity to make the most of it, which is, that's a nice thing. Sagittarius, it's more about home and family. It could be about your house. It could be renovation. It could be buying a second place. It could be moving. It could be, it could be having family reunions and relatively good times with family. When Saturn gets there in the future, then you have more responsibilities. But for right now, Sag, and particularly Sag rising, it's sort of good energy around the home. Capricorn, the pressure's off Capricorn. You had Saturn, Jupiter, you still got Pluto, but he's almost out of the sign. You've had that massive conjunction. You guys have been through a lot. This is a productive energy for you. This is, again, it's a little bit of an escape hatch, in all honesty. You're another sign that could use a little bit of an escape hatch. It's a renovation of your daily routine, making it a little bit, the opportunity to mold it a little bit more into what you want. It could be buying a big car. That's a third house type of thing. But generally speaking, it's an opportunity to take the tumultuous time that you've been through and smooth it out a little bit and direct it a little bit more. You have a little bit more direction on things. It could very much have to do with learning skills, not necessarily like a whole big course of learning, going back to college or graduate school, something like that, but just learning skills that will help you, specific skills. Take a cooking class, or, something along those lines. I don't know if that's really going to help you to do anything more than have a good dinner. But writing workshops would be good, or something like that, which might help you even in terms of social media and getting stuff out there, and maybe connecting with more people in that way, something along those lines, learning new skills. All right, and then we get to Aquarius. Now, this is a good energy, Aquarian energy, particularly Aquarius ascendants. Having Jupiter in the house is really good for finances. That's a good thing. Now, having Neptune in the second house is not so good for finances. I mean, money will either show up and or disappear without any particular rhyme or reason. when you have Neptune in the second house. Jupiter in Pisces in the second house, on the other hand, is usually just good news. And so, you know, if you get the good news, have you heard the good news about Jupiter? If you get the good news and something comes your way, it's going to be a little bit more realistic than some of the Neptunian things that have been happening to you over the course of the last decade. So it should be good for finances. Just want to point out, though, that Jupiter for everybody is a matter of opportunities. Okay. Jupiter is what I like to call the bread maker, not the actual baker, but like a bread maker. This is a big thing, like in about 15, 20 years ago. You get a bread maker, right? And you put in the flour and the yeast and some water and some other stuff, and then you leave it there overnight and set the timer, and then you know, you'd wake up to the smell of bread cooking. You know, that's just, and then you'd go down and eat the nice hot loaf of bread. Not great for the waistline, but really, really good. The thing about it though is it's a bread maker, right? And you get it usually as a gift, you know. And the thing is, you have to make the bread, right? It doesn't make the bread itself. You have to put the stuff in, you got to plug it in and program it. You don't have to do much, but you can't just do nothing. If you just let it sit there, then you just keep it under, you know, some cabinet someplace or out in the garage until a garage sale comes along and you get rid of the thing and you've never had any bread. Jupiter offers the opportunity, but you got to bring some of the motivation. You've got to take advantage of the opportunities that show up. You actually have to recognize the opportunities that show up. That's a big problem with Jupiter, especially for those of you that have kind of like really good aspects to it. Let's say Taurus and Cancer and Scorpio. Sometimes Jupiter functions in such a way that you don't necessarily really pick up on it as a thing, you know? So you're thinking, wow, I wish I had a new job. And then you hear somebody talking about a job that sounds really good. You go, well, say, I wish I had a job like that. But you don't think to go ask them about it. You see? That's the Jupiter thing. It can be almost too easy so that you can pass by stuff. Whew. All right, that's got to be like 20, 22 minutes worth of me talking about Jupiter in Pisces. Did it go on a little too long? Yeah. Did I ramble a little bit? Yeah. Why? We're talking about Pisces, you know, among the usual stuff.